slipped a cream-colored card onto the table. The front read, "Family trip. Tidy the house before we're back." Even the nanny was invited. I just smiled. When they returned and their keys no longer fit the locks, she nearly fainted. Follow along to the end and comment which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far this story travels. I should have sensed trouble that morning when Raya insisted on setting the table herself. In 12 years of marriage to my son Marcus, she'd never shown interest in such things. Normally she lounged on the sofa, scrolling her phone or critiquing the cranberry sauce. But at 7 a.m., there she was, arranging fine china with military precision. Her blonde hair was in a flawless bun, her cream sweater worth more than my month's groceries. She kept flashing me a smile that never touched her eyes, like a cat studying a mouse. "Della dear," she cooed, voice honey sweet, "why don't you stay in the kitchen? I'll handle the dining room." At 65, I'd learned which battles were worth fighting. The kitchen was my safe space anyway, where I prepared the same golden turkey, savory stuffing, and bubbling sweet potato casserole I'd served for decades, the recipes my own mother passed down. This day was supposed to be mine. A house filled with laughter, the one time each year the entire family gathered in the home where I'd raised Marcus after his father died. Marcus arrived first with the kids, Emma and Jake, who barreled into my arms with pure delight. "Grandma Della, we missed you," Emma squealed. Their hugs made every sacrifice worthwhile. Soon the house buzzed with chatter. We took our seats around the old dining table I'd bought with my first Christmas bonus. Marcus looked sharp but tired. Raya glowed as if on stage. Before Grace, she stood, voice rich with theatrics. "I have a little surprise," she announced, pulling a fancy envelope from beneath her chair. "Marcus and I have planned something special." I held my breath. Another baby? A move? She drew out the moment, then revealed a card printed in elegant script. "Family vacation to Aruba. 10 days of sun and sand. We leave tomorrow morning and return December 5th. Cheers erupted, but Raya wasn't done. She slid a second smaller card toward me, eyes locked on mine. I opened it. The words seemed to blur. House sitting duties. Deep clean all rooms, organize closets, care for plants. Completion expected by December 5th. Thank you for your service. Service. The single word rang louder than the holiday laughter around us, like I was nothing more than the hired help, not the woman who had raised the man sitting at the head of the table, not the grandmother of the 2 children now staring at me with puzzled eyes. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely there. Raya's smile sharpened. "Someone has to keep the house in order while we're gone." "You don't mind, do you? You practically live here anyway, and it's not like you have anywhere else to be." Her casual cruelty struck like a slap. Uncle Tom shifted in his chair. Raya's mother stared down at her plate. Even Marcus looked stunned, but he said nothing. "Even the sitter is coming with us," Raya added, her voice light, almost cheerful. "The kids are thrilled to have Sarah along. It'll be one big happy family vacation, one big happy family without me." I scanned the faces I'd known and loved for years. Some avoided my eyes. Others looked uneasy, but no one spoke. No one defended me. No one pointed out that I was being treated like a servant in the very home I'd built. "Grandma Della," Emma's small voice finally broke the silence. "Aren't you coming with us?" Before I could answer, Raya swooped in. "Oh, sweetheart, Grandma Della is too old for a vacation. She'd rather stay here and keep the house cozy. Wouldn't you, Della?" The question hung in the air like a dare. I felt everyone waiting, wondering if I'd make a scene and ruin their perfect holiday. I forced a smile. "Of course, I managed. I'll take good care of everything." But inside something cracked. The rest of the dinner blurred. I smiled when expected, nodded at the right moments. Clear plates like the help they apparently thought I was. Yet a spark, something long dormant, flickered awake. After the guests left and the family busied themselves with vacation plans, I slipped into the quiet kitchen. The card still lay on the counter, elegant script gleaming under the light. "Thank you for your service. 43 years in this house. 43 years of sacrifice and silence. And this was my reward, a cleaning checklist while they jetted off with the babysitter." I read the words again aloud, bitterness coating every syllable. By morning, the house was silent as an empty theater after a bad performance. They'd left at dawn, bags crammed into Marcus's SUV as if escaping a crime scene. I'd watched from my window while Raya directed the packing like a conductor, even little Jake tugging a bright blue suitcase covered in superhero stickers. Sarah, the babysitter, claimed the passenger seat, my old spot on family trips, back when I was still considered family. Before leaving, Raya had rapped on my door without waiting for permission. Perfectly styled, even at 5 a.m., she rattled off a list. Master bedroom needs a deep clean, guest closets are a mess, and the baseboards are dusty. I noticed yesterday. Make sure it's all spotless when we return. I'd only nodded from my bed, covers pulled tight like a shield. She'd scanned my modest room with thinly veiled disdain. Try to make yourself useful, she said finally. It's the least you can do. Now, hours later, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling beside me. That same insulting card lay where I'd left it. Thank you for your service. The words replayed in my mind, a relentless echo. This kitchen had witnessed Marcus's entire childhood. Morning breakfasts, late-night homework sessions, victories and heartbreaks alike. I'd built a life here, poured my soul into every corner of this home, and they thought they could reduce me to a housekeeper. They had no idea what they'd just awakened. When Marcus first brought Raya home 12 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms, grateful that my son had found someone to love. How naive I was. The shift was slow. At first, gentle suggestions. Maybe I was doing too much for Marcus. Maybe he needed space to grow as a husband. Then came the quiet digs, my cooking, my wardrobe, even my memories. Della, you work so hard, she'd say with that sugary smile. Maybe let us handle the holidays this year. Della, that dress is so vintage. Have you thought of updating your style? Della, I think you misremembered that story. Marcus told me it happened differently. Piece by piece, she erased me from my own family. And Marcus, my sweet Marcus, who once defended me from playground bullies, stood by and let it happen. I rose to refill my coffee and caught my reflection in the kitchen window. 65. Gray hair overdue for a cut, wrapped in a robe I'd owned for a decade. When had I become invisible? The morning dragged. I tried reading, but the words blurred. The television only showed picture-perfect families I couldn't relate to. Eventually, I found myself outside Marcus's old bedroom, now Raya's personal boutique. The door stood slightly open, revealing rows of designer shoes lined up like soldiers, handbags displayed like museum art. All of it purchased with money from the business Marcus ran, a business I had helped start with my life savings. But the master bedroom stopped being cold. This house, my sanctuary for over 40 years, looked like a hotel. Last year, Raya redecorated, erasing every trace of my life with Marcus's father. The bed where I'd read bedtime stories, the dresser that once held family photos, the rocking chair where I'd soothed a feverish child. All gone. I sat on the edge of their new bed, fingertips brushing a silk comforter that probably cost more than my monthly income. This had been mine once. Technically, it still was. That's when I noticed the jewelry box, pearls and diamonds spilling out carelessly, and a stack of open mail on the nightstand. Against my better judgment, I lifted the top envelope. A mortgage statement for this house, my house. The house my husband and I bought 43 years ago. The house paid off 15 years back, thanks to every penny of his life insurance. I'd made sure Marcus would inherit a home free and clear. My hands trembled as the truth settled in. Marcus had been sending monthly mortgage payments to an account Raya controlled. For 5 years. She'd convinced him the house still carried debt. She'd been siphoning money from her own husband on a property that belonged solely to me. I sank into the chair by the window, the statement clutched in my shaking hands. Below, the garden stretched in the afternoon sun. The roses I planted when Marcus was little. The herb patch where I taught him the difference between basil and oregano. The oak tree that once held his tire swing. Every brick, every memory, mine. That elegant card downstairs flashed in my mind. Thank you for your service. As if I were hired help. As if I should be grateful for scraps of acknowledgement. But I wasn't the help. I was the owner. I walked to my own bedroom and unlocked the old filing cabinet tucked deep in the closet. Inside, carefully protected in plastic sleeves, lay the documents of my life. Marriage certificate, insurance papers, and the deed to this house. My name, bold and clear, Della Mae Henderson, sole owner. I sat holding that deed like a shield. When had I become so afraid of my own family that I forgot who I was? When did I start accepting crumbs when the feast was mine all along? The phone rang, jolting me back. Caller ID, Raya. For a heartbeat, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But old habits are hard to break. I answered. Hello, Della. Raya's voice burst through the phone, bright and fake. Tropical music and children's laughter spilling into the background. Just calling to check in. How's the cleaning going? I glanced around my modest bedroom, unchanged for decades, while they turned the rest of my house into their showroom. It's going fine, I said. Wonderful. I left a more detailed list on the kitchen counter. Did you find it? I hadn't even looked. Yes, I found it. Great. Oh, and Marcus wanted me to remind you to water his golf clubs. The leather needs conditioning in this weather. Water his golf clubs. In December, in the garage. I almost laughed. Almost. Of course, I said instead. Perfect. We're having such a wonderful time. The kids are at the beach with Sarah, and Marcus and I are about to have couples massages. Exactly what we needed. A break from all the stress at home. The stress at home meaning me. I'm glad you're enjoying yourselves, I managed. We are. Gotta run. Massage in 5 minutes. Make sure you get those baseboards, Della. They were really dusty. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in one hand, the house deed in the other. 43 years of memories in these walls. 43 years of sacrifice. And now I was left with orders to scrub baseboards and water golf clubs while they lived it up in paradise. But something inside me shifted, something buried under years of shrinking myself to keep the peace. I stood, smoothed my robe, and walked to the kitchen. On the counter lay Raya's 3-page cleaning manifesto, each room itemized down to alphabetizing the spice rack. I read it once, then carried it to the fireplace. The morning fire was nothing but glowing embers. I held the pages over the flames and let them go. Raya's perfect handwriting curled, blackened, and turned to ash. What I felt wasn't anger. Anger was draining. It wasn't hurt. I'd carried enough hurt for a lifetime. It was clarity. They expected to return to a spotless home and a grateful servant. They were wrong. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Harold Peterson, our family lawyer of nearly 3 decades. The secretary recognized my voice instantly. Della, how lovely to hear from you. Harold's with a client, but he'll want to talk to you. May I put you on hold? As I waited, frost sparkled on the rose bushes outside the kitchen window, the garden shimmering like new crystal. It felt symbolic, like the world itself was starting fresh. Della, Harold's warm voice finally came through. What a pleasant surprise. How are you? I'm well, Harold. I need to ask something important about the house. Of course. If I wanted to change the locks on my property, legally speaking, what would I need to do? A pause. As the property owner, you have every right to change locks, install security, whatever you feel is necessary. Has there been a break-in? No break-in. I just need to be sure of my rights. Marcus and his family have been living here, but the deed is still in my name, correct? Absolutely. We've discussed transferring it a few times, but you never signed the papers. The property remains entirely yours. Della, is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, I said, and for the first time in years I meant it. I'm simply reclaiming what's mine. I see, he said softly. Would you like me to prepare any documentation? Perhaps a formal notice of changed living arrangements? That would be helpful. How quickly could you have it ready? Tomorrow afternoon. But Della, are you sure? I know how much your family means to you. I looked around the kitchen. The cabinets Raya mocked as outdated, the counters she insisted needed replacing, the breakfast nook where she'd humiliated me days ago. My family means everything to me, Harold, I said. That's exactly why I'm doing this. After we hung up, I grabbed my coat and car keys. For the first time in months, I was heading into town, no longer the woman who hid at home to avoid Raya's constant critiques. Today I felt different. Today, I felt free. My first stop was Miller's Hardware, the same place that sold locks and keys in our town for 40 years. Pete Miller looked up from his newspaper, his face breaking into a warm smile. Della Henderson, haven't seen you in a dog's age. How have you been? I've been better, I said, but I'm working on that. I explained what I needed. Pete didn't ask questions, he just nodded and pulled out a heavy sample book, pointing out the difference between standard locks and high-security deadbolts. This brass deadbolt right here, he said, tapping the page. What I'd put on my own house. Solid, pick-resistant, comes with 5 keys so you control access. 5 keys. Not for people I was obligated to trust, 5 keys for people who had truly earned it. My next stop felt even more freeing. Branson's Consignment Shop, a fixture on Main Street, run by Martha Branson, who'd built her business from nothing after her divorce decades ago. She looked up from a rack of winter coats and lit up. Della Henderson, as I live and breathe, what brings you to my little corner of capitalism? I actually laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. I need to sell some furniture, Martha. Quite a bit, actually. Well, you've come to the right place. What kind of pieces? I showed her the photos I'd taken that morning. Raya's beloved living room set she'd insisted on buying last year. The formal dining table no one ever used because the kitchen was too casual. The pristine guest bedroom suite kept visitor-free by Raya's rules. Martha whistled low. High-end stuff? Where'd you get furniture like this? It was bought for my house, I said simply, but it doesn't suit me anymore. Her eyes sharpened. Small towns keep few secrets. I can give you good money for pieces like this. Are you sure? Some look brand new. I'm sure. How fast do you need pickup? Tomorrow morning. That afternoon, I drove to every furniture store within 50 miles, hunting for pieces that spoke to me. Not some showroom ideal. I found a soft blue sectional perfect for curling up with a book. A dining table made from reclaimed wood, scarred and beautiful, with sturdy farmhouse chairs. A bedroom set that was simple and strong, nothing flashy but mine. By Wednesday, the delivery trucks rolled in. Out went Raya's sterile perfection. In came furniture that welcomed you to sit, stay, breathe. I moved my favorite reading chair to the sunniest window, set the kitchen table so I could watch birds at the feeder, and, best of all, hung my photographs back on the walls. Pictures Raya had exiled to my bedroom. Marcus as a baby, my husband and me on our wedding day. 3 generations of holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. Each photo returned to its rightful place, the house reclaiming its story. Thursday afternoon, Mrs. Patterson from next door arrived with a casserole and curious eyes. I saw the delivery trucks, she said, peeking in. Spring cleaning in December, I replied, accepting her dish with real gratitude. She'd been quietly bringing me food for months, her kindness never failing. It looks lovely, she said, smiling. Very you. Yes, I thought as I closed the door. Very me. That evening I curled up in my new living room with a cup of tea and a mystery novel. The house felt lighter, alive. The air itself seemed easier to breathe. My phone buzzed, a photo from Raya, the family on the beach, everyone tanned and grinning, captioned, "Wish you were here," followed by a laughing emoji. But I didn't wish I were there. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be. I deleted Raya's beach photo without a second thought and went back to my book. Tomorrow Harold would bring the paperwork. Tomorrow the new reality would begin. But tonight, I was home, truly home, for the first time in years. Outside, the wind rattled the windows and shook the bare oak branches. A storm was coming. I wasn't afraid. My house was solid. So was I. Sunday morning, 10:37. Car doors slammed in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I spotted Marcus's SUV, luggage stacked high. They were back from paradise, tanned, rested, no doubt expecting to find a spotless house and a grateful servant. The front door handle rattled, then again harder. That's strange, I heard Marcus say. My key's not working. Try another one, Raya snapped. Keys jingled in rapid succession. Nothing. It's like the lock's been changed, Marcus said, confusion creeping into his voice. That's impossible, Raya shot back. Who would change our locks? Footsteps circled to the kitchen door. I stayed at the table, calmly turning the newspaper page, heart beating steady. The handle turned. Locked, of course. Mom, Marcus called, knocking. Mom, are you in there? The locks don't work. I took a slow sip of my coffee, the expensive blend I'd finally bought for myself, with fresh cream and real maple syrup. Small luxuries of a new life. Mom! The knocking grew louder. Can you hear me? I folded the paper, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see them. Marcus bewildered, Raya furious, the kids jet-lagged, and Sarah the babysitter awkwardly clutching her overnight bag. Hello, I said pleasantly. How was the trip? Mom, thank God, Marcus stepped forward. Something's wrong with the locks. None of our keys. He stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening as he looked past me. What happened to the furniture? I glanced back as if noticing for the first time. Oh, that. I redecorated. You what? Raya pushed past him, craning her neck. Where's my dining set? My chairs? I sold them, I said evenly. They didn't suit me. Her face went white, then crimson. You sold my furniture? You can't do that. That was expensive. It was purchased for my house, I corrected gently. Technically, it was mine to sell. Grandma Della? Emma's small voice cut through the tension. Can we come in? I need the bathroom. Sweet Emma, innocent in all this. Of course, sweetheart, I said, opening the door a little wider. You know where it is. As Emma slipped past me, Jake started to follow. Raya gripped his arm. No, she barked. We all go in together. Actually, I said, lifting an eyebrow, you don't. This is my house. I decide who enters. The words landed like a quiet explosion. Marcus stared, speechless. Sarah shifted uneasily. Even little Jake sensed the moment's weight. Raya laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Your house? Don't be ridiculous. We live here. We pay the mortgage. Actually, I said, tilting my head, you don't pay a mortgage. There is no mortgage. This house was paid off 15 years ago. Marcus frowned. That's not possible. I write a check every month to the account your wife set up. I finished. Harold Peterson confirmed everything. You've been paying rent to live in my home, Marcus. Except the money has been going straight into your wife's private account. Silence. I watched Marcus process the words, each piece sliding into place. Raya's face drained of color. That's not... She faltered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, voice calm but unyielding. You've been taking money from your own husband while treating me like hired help in the house I own. You convinced him to pay for a mortgage that doesn't exist while you humiliated me at my own table. Marcus turned to Raya, eyes searching her face. Raya, he said quietly, and in that charged pause, the entire truth settled over the porch like the coming storm. Marcus's face drained of color. Is this true? Raya looked up at him, eyes wide and desperate. Marcus, you don't understand. I was trying to help. I was saving the money. For us. For our future. You are stealing, he said flatly. From me. From my mother. I wasn't stealing. Her voice shot up to a near shriek. I was protecting our interests. Your mother doesn't need this house. She's old. She should be in a retirement home anyway. We're young. We have children. We deserve... She stopped, realizing too late what she'd just admitted. Marcus stared at her as if seeing a stranger. We deserve what, Raya? To steal from my mother? To treat her like a servant in her own home? That's exactly what you meant. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. You thought you could push her out? Take over her house and she'd just disappear? Raya's composure shattered. She spun toward me, face twisted with fury. This is your fault. You turned him against me. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see anyone else happy. I studied her, the woman who'd made my life miserable for 12 years, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a deep, steady calm. I didn't turn him against you, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. She let out a strangled sound and crumpled. One moment she was shouting. The next she collapsed onto the porch like a puppet with its strings cut. Sarah gasped and stepped back. Jake began to cry. Marcus simply stared down at his unconscious wife. Well, I said, stepping into the kitchen, you'd better call an ambulance. But Marcus wasn't looking at Raya anymore. He was looking at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Respect, he said softly. Mom, I'm so sorry. I nodded but didn't answer. Sorry was a start, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Can we talk, he asked. After we deal with this. I studied my son, the little boy I'd raised, now a man forced to face the truth about the life he'd allowed. We can talk, I said at last, but not today. Today, you need to figure out where you're going to stay. His face fell. Mom, please. We don't have anywhere else to go. You have money, I replied. All that money Raya's been siphoning from you? I'm sure she can afford a hotel. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He looked down at Raya, beginning to stir, and then back at me. The children, he said quietly. What about Emma and Jake? For a heartbeat, my resolve wavered. My grandchildren were innocent. They didn't deserve to be pawns. They can visit, I said carefully, when you're ready for a real conversation about respect and boundaries. But not today. Just then, Emma appeared beside me, fresh from the bathroom. Grandma Della, why is Mommy sleeping on the porch? I knelt to her level, smoothing her sun-streaked hair. Your mommy just got a little overwhelmed, sweetheart. She'll be fine. Are we not living here anymore? She asked, fear trembling in her voice. Your home plans will change, I said gently. But that doesn't change how much I love you. You'll always be my granddaughter, no matter where you live. She hugged me tight, smelling of sunshine and bubble gum. I held her close, and when I looked up, Marcus was watching us with tears in his eyes. By the time the paramedics arrived, Raya was conscious but frantic, accusing me of plotting some elaborate revenge. The medics, calm and professional, suggested exhaustion and stress. Vacation can be overwhelming, one said kindly. The transition back can be harder than expected. As they loaded her into the ambulance, Raya grabbed Marcus's hand. Don't let her do this to us. Fight for our family, fight for our home. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. This isn't our home, Raya, he said quietly. It never was. That was when I knew the true change had come. Not because I'd changed the locks or exposed Raya's lies, but because my son had finally opened his eyes. The ambulance pulled away. Marcus gathered the children and followed in silence. I stood on my porch, the crisp autumn air filling my lungs. Mrs. Patterson called from her fence, having clearly witnessed the drama. Everything all right over there, Della? I glanced at my reclaimed house. Comfortable furniture, family photos back in their places, the scent of good coffee lingering in the kitchen. Everything I needed, finally mine. Everything's perfect, I called back, and it was. 3 quiet days passed before Marcus finally came alone. 3 days filled with small pleasures I'd almost forgotten. Reading an entire book without interruption, cooking meals I actually wanted, sleeping through the night without that constant, low hum of anxiety. Wednesday evening, just as I settled in with a cup of tea and the evening news, I heard a car in the driveway. No rattling keys this time, no raised voices, just a single gentle knock. When I opened the door, Marcus stood there looking as if he'd aged 5 years and 3 days. His shirt was wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Mom, he said quietly, can we talk? I stepped aside. He paused in the doorway, taking in the house, the warm furniture, family photos back on the walls, a home that finally felt lived in. It looks good, he said, a hint of relief in his voice. It looks like home. Sit, I said, gesturing toward the sofa. I'll make coffee. As I moved around the kitchen, I felt his eyes on me. The silence wasn't hostile. It was the careful quiet of 2 people trying to bridge years of distance. How's Raya? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He exhaled heavily. She's not handling this well. The doctor calls it a severe stress reaction, but I think it's more than that. I think she's realizing everything she thought she controlled is slipping away. I set a cup in front of him, 2 sugars, a splash of cream, the way he'd liked it since he was a teenager. The fact that I still remembered seemed to surprise him. Where are you staying? The Hampton Inn on Route 9. Not ideal with the kids, but temporary. At least I hope it is. That depends on what temporary means to you. He looked up, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be beneath the weary man. Mom, I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just about the house or the money, about everything. About letting her treat you that way. About watching you disappear from your own life. Why? The question I'd carried for years finally found air. Why did you let it happen? He worked his jaw, searching for words. At first I thought she was just particular. Newlyweds have to adjust. But every time I defended you, we'd fight. She'd cry. Accuse me of choosing my mother over my wife. Make me feel guilty. And little by little, I started believing her. She was so confident. When she said you were too involved, that you needed boundaries, that you were holding me back, I thought maybe she was right. The confession hung between us like a bell's last echo. She made me feel like loving you was a weakness, he whispered, voice cracking. Like being close to my own mother was something to be ashamed of. Tears pricked my eyes. Not of sadness, but of recognition. At last he understood. The money, I asked softly. How long? 5 years. He gave a bitter laugh. 5 years of checks for a mortgage that didn't exist. I never questioned it. She handled all the finances, said it was easier that way. I was working nonstop, so I just trusted her. What will you do now? Marcus looked around the room again. The comfortable furniture, the photos of his childhood, the house that finally told our story. I don't know. I've been thinking about it for 3 days, and I still don't know. What do you want? I asked. Not what's expected. Not what causes the least conflict. What do you want? He was quiet for a long time. Outside, Mrs. Patterson's dog barked at some unseen squirrel. The neighborhood settling into evening. I want my kids to know their grandmother, he said finally. Really know you. Not just see you on holidays when Raya remembers to be polite. I want them to learn to cook with you the way I did. I want Emma to hear your stories, and I want Jake to help you in the garden next spring. He met my eyes. And I want to remember who I was before I spent 12 years trying to be someone else's idea of a good husband. I swallowed hard. And Raya, the question he'd been avoiding, the one that would decide everything. Marcus stared down at his hands, silent. For the first time in years, I truly meant it. 3 quiet days passed before Marcus came back alone. 3 days of simple pleasures, finishing entire books, cooking meals I actually craved, sleeping through the night without that low, constant tension. On Wednesday evening, just as I settled in with tea and the evening news, I heard his car in the driveway. No rattling keys, no raised voices, only a gentle knock. Marcus stood at the door looking as if he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. Rumpled clothes, uncombed hair, dark circles beneath his eyes. Mom, he said quietly, can we talk? I stepped aside. He paused, taking in the house. Comfortable furniture, family photos back on the walls, a home that finally felt alive. It looks good, he said, almost relieved. It looks like home. I gestured to the sofa. Sit, I'll make coffee. We moved around each other in a silence that wasn't hostile, just the careful quiet of 2 people finding their way back. How's Raya? I asked. He let out a weary breath. Not well. She's threatening to take the kids if I don't fight you on the house. Says she'll claim you're too old to be around them, that you're unfit. She's even threatening to say I abused her, that living here drove her to steal. A chill ran through me. Do you think she'll do it? I think Raya will do whatever it takes to get what she wants. And what she wants is this house, your money, and control over the story. His voice hardened. But I'm not letting that happen. What does that mean, practically? It means I'm filing for divorce. I'm fighting for custody. I'll pay back every penny she took, with interest. And I'll make sure everyone knows this house belongs to you and always has. I searched his face for empty promises. What I saw was resolve, the same stubborn streak that had carried him through every childhood challenge. That won't be easy, I said. No, he admitted. She's already calling my business partners, telling them I've had a breakdown. She's painting herself as a victim of elder abuse, claiming you've manipulated me. But you know what? A faint smile tugged at his mouth. I don't care anymore. I'm done living in fear of her next move. We sat for a while in comfortable silence, sipping coffee. Finally, he spoke again. Mom, I need to ask you something. Do you think you can forgive me? Not today, but someday. Can we find our way back to each other? I looked at my son, the little boy who once brought me dandelions like they were roses, who had let years of small humiliations slip by without a word. I thought about all we'd lost, and all we could still rebuild. You're already forgiven, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. We can't go back. I don't want to go back, he said quickly. I want to go forward. To build something honest. I saw the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. It softened his entire face. Can I ask you something else? He said. When you changed the locks, sold the furniture, when you finally took the house back, were you scared? Terrified, I admitted. But I realized I'd been scared for years, of conflict, of being called difficult. Fear was making all my decisions anyway. At least this time, I was scared doing something that mattered to me. Marcus let out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. It's the bravest thing I've ever heard you say. Language, I teased automatically, and we both laughed. We talked for another hour, making careful plans. He'd bring the children this weekend to start rebuilding family ties. He'd repay the stolen money, not because I needed it, but because it was right. As he stood to leave, Marcus hesitated. Mom, that card Raya gave you at Thanksgiving, the house-sitting one. I had no idea she planned that. If I'd known, I'd have stopped it. I believed him. The boy I raised would never have intentionally humiliated me. I know, I said. And in a way, I'm grateful she did it. Grateful? If she hadn't pushed me so far, I might never have found the courage to push back. After Marcus left, I sat in my quiet house feeling something new. Hope. Not the fragile hope that someone else might change, but the grounded kind that comes from knowing you have choices, that you hold the power to shape your own life. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Raya would fight dirty. There would be hard days when the children missed their mother, when Marcus wavered. But I was ready. I was no longer the woman who smiled through humiliation at a Thanksgiving table. I was Della Henderson. This was my house, my life, my choice. 6 months later, a Saturday morning, I stood in the kitchen teaching Emma how to make my famous chocolate chip pancakes, the same recipe I'd taught Marcus when he was her age. The same kitchen where 3 generations of our family had learned that cooking isn't just about food. It's about love, tradition, and caring for the people who matter. The secret, I told her, guiding the spoon through the batter, is not to overmix. Emma giggled, sunlight catching the flour on her cheeks. And for the first time in decades, the house felt completely, joyfully whole. A few lumps are perfectly fine, I told Emma as she stirred the pancake batter with careful concentration. At 10, she understood more than she let on. She knew our family had changed, even if the details were fuzzy. What mattered to her was simple. Every other weekend she spent with Grandma Della meant recipes, stories, and love without conditions. From the living room came Jake's cheerful shouts. At 8, he had embraced the new routine with the easy resilience of childhood. His laughter, so long absent, filled the house like music. Grandma, Emma said in a conspiratorial whisper, Daddy says Mommy is getting better. Is that true? I considered my answer. Raya was improving, yes, at least clinically. Doctors called it adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood. But real life was messier. Medication, therapy, and the slow acceptance that the world she tried to control had fallen apart. Your mommy is working very hard to feel better, I said honestly, and that's good for everyone. The divorce had been finalized 2 months earlier. Marcus was generous in the settlement, more generous than Harold Peterson thought wise, but he wanted a clean break, a chance to rebuild without a drawn-out fight. Raya had moved back to her parents' home in Connecticut. Emma and Jake visited her 2 weekends a month, supervised for now, with the hope that one day, visits would feel natural. I'd worried how the children would handle it, but they proved remarkably resilient when adults told them the truth. Marcus had explained gently that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt the people they love, and that sometimes the best way to fix those mistakes is to make big changes. Will you and Daddy get back together? Emma had once asked. No, sweetheart, I'd said. But that doesn't mean your family is broken. It just means your family looks different now. And it did. Marcus rented a small house 10 minutes away, close enough for the kids to bike over, far enough for everyone to have space. Most Sundays he came for coffee, sometimes staying for lunch, carefully rebuilding our relationship conversation by conversation. Freed from Raya's expensive demands and constant pressure, he focused on work he actually enjoyed. His business was thriving, his energy returning. He looked more like the son I remembered, healthy, grounded, content. Grandma, Jake's voice carried from the living room. Come see my castle. I wiped my hands on my apron and followed his call. The entire room had become an elaborate fortress of cushions and blankets, towers, bridges, secret tunnels only an 8-year-old could design. This is magnificent, I said, genuinely impressed. Are you the king of this castle? Jake shook his head solemnly. No, you're the queen. Emma's the princess. Daddy's the knight who protects us from dragons. My throat tightened. In Jake's world, I wasn't the servant or the afterthought. I was the queen. That's a very important job, I said, kneeling beside him. What are my royal duties? He thought carefully. You have to make sure everyone has enough pancakes, tell stories about when Daddy was little, and give the best hugs in the kingdom. I think I can handle that, I said, sweeping him into my arms for a proper royal hug. The front door opened, and Marcus stepped inside, carrying a bouquet of daffodils and tulips. the first blooms of spring. Bringing flowers each Sunday had become his quiet tradition, a small gesture that spoke volumes. "Something smells amazing," he said. Hanging his jacket on the coat rack, I'd returned to its rightful place by the door. The house smelled of pancakes and fresh flowers, of second chances and steady love. For the first time in years, this home and this family felt whole. And I, Della Henderson, stood at the center of it all, the queen of my own life. "Emma's making pancakes," I announced with pride. She beamed, flipping a pancake with the focus of a surgeon. The family's cooking instinct had clearly skipped her father, but landed squarely on her. We all gathered around the reclaimed wood table I'd chosen to replace Raya's stiff, formal dining set. Conversation flowed easily. Emma's upcoming school play, Jake's soccer practice, Marcus's plans to expand his business, my new library book club. It was ordinary. It was perfect. Nothing like the tense, performance-driven meals we'd endured for so many years. After breakfast, Marcus helped me with the dishes while the kids disappeared into their projects. We moved in quiet harmony, the way we had when he was little, and it had been just the two of us against the world. "Mom," he said, drying a plate with deliberate care, "I've been thinking. What's on your mind?" "The money. The mortgage payments Raya took. I know I'm paying you back, but what if we made it official? What if I paid you rent to stay here some weekends when the kids are with me?" I paused, sponge in hand. "Marcus, you have your own place now." "I know," he said quickly. "Not full-time. Just Friday and Saturday nights when the kids are here. Maybe Sunday too if it works. I'd cover utilities, groceries, any maintenance. Your house, your rules." The phrase that once caused friction now felt like a gift. A simple recognition of something that should have been obvious all along. "I'd like that," I said, his face lit with relief. Really? But we'll set clear boundaries. Expectations for everyone. Absolutely. Whatever you think is best." We talked through the details for the next hour. Schedules, chores, a plan that honored each of our needs while weaving our family back together. That afternoon, while Marcus took the children to the park, I sat in the garden with tea and the Sunday paper. Roses I'd planted decades ago were budding. The herb garden showed the first shoots of spring. After a long, difficult winter, everything was coming back to life. Mrs. Patterson waved from across the yard as she hung laundry on the clothesline she refused to replace with a dryer. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she called. "Perfect," I called back, and meant it. My phone buzzed. For a heartbeat, the old anxiety flared. Months earlier, Raya's angry, manipulative texts had arrived daily until Harold Peterson warned her lawyer about harassment charges. But the screen showed a different name. Sandra, my older son David's wife, texting from Oregon. "Heard from Marcus about everything. So proud of you for standing up for yourself. Can't wait to visit this summer and see the new and improved family dynamic." I smiled and typed back a quick reply. The garden around me hummed with the promise of spring. The house, my house, was peaceful and alive. For the first time in decades, every part of my life felt exactly where it belonged. David had been shocked when he finally learned the full story, apologizing for not noticing, for not stepping in during his rare visits. I forgave him easily. Sometimes it's hardest to see dysfunction when you're standing on the outside looking in. From the park down the street came the sound of children's laughter. Marcus pushing Jake on the swings while Emma practiced cartwheels in the grass. My family, different now, smaller, but stronger and more authentic than ever. I thought back to that terrible Thanksgiving dinner 6 months earlier. The humiliation of that card. The version of myself who accepted cruelty as the price of family, who shrank to keep the peace. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone who knows her own worth, who understands that love without respect isn't love at all, and who finally realizes the most important person to stand up for is herself. The house around me glowed in the setting sun, quiet, peaceful, filled with furniture I'd chosen and memories I cherished. It was home in the truest sense. Not just because my name is on the deed, but because I inhabit it fully, unapologetically. I began planning the week ahead: book club on Tuesday, lunch with an old friend Wednesday, Emma's school play Friday. Simple pleasures, chosen, not imposed. Soon the door opened with the joyful chaos of returning adventurers. Emma burst in, bubbling about the ducks on the pond. Jake announced he was starving and begged for grilled cheese. Marcus followed, relaxed and content, in a way I hadn't seen in years. "How was your afternoon, Mom?" he asked. The same question he'd asked every Sunday since we began rebuilding. "Perfect," I said, and meant it. I pulled ingredients from the fridge for grilled cheese and tomato soup, surrounded by the people who loved me and the home that was truly mine. And I knew I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I am enough. I always was. And I will never again accept less than I deserve. Your turn. What would you have done in my place? Have you faced something similar when standing up for yourself changed everything? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And before you go, stay with this channel for more powerful true stories. On the end screen, you'll see 2 viewer favorites that might surprise you. Thank you for watching and for spending this time with me.